All right, let's just dive right into this. Today, in this explainer, we are decoding something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at a profound cosmic framework that comes straight from ancient Vedic wisdom, specifically the deep philosophical insights found in the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of reality, the choices you and I make every single day, and ultimately, the roadmap to genuine liberation. So if you've ever found yourself wondering how the universe actually operates on a spiritual level, you are definitely in the right place. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. We're covering 6 main areas. First, the cosmic framework. Then, the Great Divide. Divine qualities, demonic qualities, practical detachment, and finally, higher taste and liberation. So let's kick things off with a pretty massive question. Why exactly are we in this material world? Like, are we just wandering around aimlessly here, or is there a specific, intentional architecture to our existence? Well, to answer that, we really have to look at the grand mechanics of reality itself. Which brings us to Section 1, the cosmic framework. Understanding reality. Now, this is absolutely crucial. The source material beautifully illustrates our reality using the analogy of an inverted banyan tree. And it boils the entire vastly complex universe down to just 5 elegant, fundamental elements. We have Ishwar, Jiva, Prakriti, Kal, and Karma. Let me break these down because they literally make up the whole shebang. First, there's Ishwar, the supreme controller, basically the root of all existence. Second is the Jiva, the individual soul. That's you, that's me, the vital spark of consciousness. Third is Prakriti, which is material nature, the grand physical stage we're all interacting on. Fourth is Kal, the eternal, unstoppable pulse of time. And finally, fifth is Karma, our actions. And here's the really beautiful part. Out of all 5 of these, Karma is the only one that can actually be changed. The rest are eternal. So poetically speaking, our entire journey is simply how the Jiva interacts with Prakriti through Karma over the vast expanse of Kal, with this ultimate, deep yearning to reconnect with Ishwar. Right, let's move on to Section 2, the Great Divide and the 2 paths for the soul. So the text distinguishes between 2 different states of the soul. On one side, we've got the Mukta Jiva, which is the completely liberated soul. But on the other side, we have the Baddha Jiva, the conditioned soul that's trapped in this material world. And the source material uses this fantastic analogy that I just love. Think of the conditioned soul, the Baddha Jiva, like a bird in the sky. It constantly has to fight gravity, right? It literally has to flap its wings just to stay aloft, let alone try to climb any higher. So, the multi-million-dollar question is, what happens if that bird just stops flapping its wings? It falls. It's really that simple. As a conditioned soul, you only have 2 choices. Step 1, you elevate yourself by actively cultivating daivi or divine qualities. Or step 2, you degrade by adopting asuri or demonic qualities. Notice there's no standing still option. If you stop putting in the active effort to elevate yourself, the immense gravity of the material world is just going to automatically pull you down. Let's look a bit closer at Section 3, Divine Qualities, and what this path of elevation actually entails. One of the most important concepts here is abe, which translates to fearlessness. The text makes a really profound point. Human fear stems directly from material attachment. The speaker in the source shares this wild, almost unbelievable anecdote about a woman living on Synagogue Road. She literally sat next to a pile of garbage, violently guarding it and throwing stones at anyone who even got close to it. Why? Simply because she considered that trash to be hers. I mean, that is the absolute peak of material attachment. We cling to temporary things, absolutely terrified of losing them, even if it's literal garbage. True fearlessness, true abe, only comes when you finally release that iron grip. And if you want to see what that true fearlessness looks like in the real world, the source highlights the incredible journey of Srila Prabhupada. This wasn't some easy paved path. He faced intense opposition starting out in Jhansi. Then he waited patiently in Mumbai just to get passage on a cargo ship. While on that ship at age 70, he survived 3 massive heart attacks in the middle of the ocean. And he finally arrives in America with exactly 40 rupees to his name to spread this wisdom. He had 0 material attachments, just absolute, unshakable faith in the Supreme. That right there is ultimate abahai. Okay, shifting gears to Section 4, demonic qualities and the downward path of ignorance. The texts draw a really sharp contrast here. Where divine qualities bring us fearlessness and true knowledge, demonic qualities, the downward path, are rooted in something called damba, which is arrogance and pride. It leads to deep ignorance and the cycle of endless hoarding. Now, a quick side note.
The text is careful to point out that when we say demonic, we aren't talking about literal monsters with horns. We're talking about everyday people who are just trapped in endless anxiety. People who are obsessed with wealth, power, and prestige, and constantly stressed out because their appetite for material gain is just completely insatiable.
In fact, the source material perfectly captures that toxic hoarding mindset with this pretty chilling quote: "I have this wealth today, and I will gain more tomorrow. I am the Lord, I am the enjoyer." It's just this massive illusion of control, right? The conditioned soul completely forgets about the grand cosmic framework we talked about earlier. They forget about issuer and call, and they falsely start to believe that they are the supreme controllers of their own fragile little empires. And the source points out that this enjoying mentality is heavily fueled by certain false modern paradigms. Think about it. If society teaches us that we are literally nothing but random matter born from absolute chance, that we evolved from monkeys and have zero spiritual essence, well, the logical conclusion for an ignorant mind is to just consume and exploit as much as possible while you're here. The texts argue that this purely materialistic worldview is exactly what leads to the destruction of nature and creates the fractured, deeply anxious society we see today. So how do we actually fix this? That brings us to Section 5, Practical Detachment. The texts distinguish between two very different types of detachment. On one side, we have what's called market vairagya, or monkey renunciation. Just picture this. A monkey lives in the forest, wears absolutely no clothes, doesn't own any property, so on the outside, it looks incredibly detached, right? But what does it actually do all day? It spends its entire time swinging from tree to tree, chasing female monkeys. It's totally fake renunciation. It's what happens when someone pretends to give up the world on the outside, but deep down they're secretly still harboring these intense, burning material desires. Yeah, we definitely want to avoid that. What we actually want to strive for is called yukta vairagya, practical detachment. This means utilizing material resources and the world itself from a much higher spiritual purpose. Because true renunciation isn't about running away to live in a cave or throwing away your hard-earned wealth. It's actually about giving up your attachment to the results of your work. It's taking your technology, your money, your very unique talents, and using them to serve the greater cosmic order, rather than just feeding your own selfish ego. Which brings us to our final section, higher taste and liberation. So how do you actually develop this practical detachment? Because let's be real for a second. You can't just forcefully tell your brain to stop liking material things. It doesn't work. The speaker in the source shares this hilariously relatable story from his college days to explain this. He was this super arrogant science student, entirely trapped in a materialistic mindset, and he was actually trying to mock some monks during a campus ragging incident. But he admits that all of his arrogance was completely dismantled by what he lovingly calls ISKCON bullets. And what were those bullets? The unimaginably pure, sweet taste of a gulab jamun prasad and the captivating sound of the Mahamantra. He literally says his materialistic ego died that day, all because he experienced a joy that was just vastly superior to his own intellectual pride. And that story perfectly illustrates the actual three-step process of true liberation. Step 1, you have to encounter a higher taste, a genuine, profound spiritual joy. Step 2, once you actually experience that higher taste, you just naturally and effortlessly lose your appetite for lower material anxieties and toxic habits. You don't have to forcefully repress them anymore. They just fall away. And then step 3, once you're finally detached, you are completely free to perform your prescribed duties in the world perfectly without being paralyzed or bound up by worrying about the results. Because, as this key quote emphasizes, one should never abandon prescribed duties. True spirituality doesn't give you a free pass to become lazy or irresponsible. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It empowers you to be the absolute best student, the best parent, the best worker you can possibly be. Why? Because you aren't doing it out of toxic fear or some greedy need to hoard anymore. You're doing it purely out of joy, as an offering. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on today. Are your daily actions binding you deeper into this material world, or are they actually a stepping stone to your liberation? Remember those 5 fundamental elements: Ishwar, Jiva, Prakriti, Kal, and Karma. Remember the bird fighting gravity. The choice of whether to flap those wings is yours, every single day. Thanks so much for joining me to decode all this. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.